appreciate it. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's share from our Yaakov Smitchlita, challenging Meister Ksafim questions. I'd like to have is sponsoring a share for the Erev Share Torah 718-851-8651.
You hear often questions regarding Meister Ksafim, and I wanted to try to focus on a group of them. The most of the question, someone who got a gift, an expensive gift. Does he have to give Meister? It's not cash, or Bachrim, or single girls that make money. The Meister, young light that get help from parents. Because basically, when does the Chiv of Meister apply? What is the Chiv of Meister? So as our Derech Beth Hashem always is to try to find one Yisoid and get information to discuss the many Shilas, I think we have to clarify first, what is the nature, what is the purpose of Meister Ksafim? As we know, Yidden are best described as Noisnim, B'nai Noisnim. It's amazing, you know, I heard one of the former politicians wrote a book, and he decided to give 0.5% of his royalties to charity. And they made him into a saint. At that time, 0.5%. You have the average Yid that gives 10 or 20% of their survival, they give to tzedakah regularly. Yid not giving, we have so many mitzvahs, we have the mitzvah tzedakah, lavim, and aseh, we have ma'aseh oni, ma'aseh sheni. So the obvious question is, so what is ma'aseh ksafim all about? Is it like ma'aseh oni, so why do you need ma'aseh ksafim? Is it like tzedakah, so why do you need a new name, ma'aseh ksafim? And the other what makes this challenging, there is no Gemara about ma'aseh ksafim, there's no Shulchan Aruch. Mechaber doesn't mention it at all. Ramah mentions it a little bit in Hilchos Tzedakah. I saw the Noid Yehuda in Yeridei Tinyana. It's in the Kufzah B'ches. Someone asked him, Ma'aseh Ksafim Shaila. So he writes back that I don't enjoy learning Hilchos, discussing questions of Ma'aseh, because the Gemara is the Makar to draw Svaras and Rayas. But Ma'aseh Ksafim, there's no Gemara. So all I'm left with, and I quote, is Svaras Kreisios, Boya Svaras. If you go about there, when I do the rights, that Anan, Man, Hena, Basrai, you know, so you have to basically try to figure out, extrapolate from other places. But the emphasis is there are very prominent sources in the Torah regarding Ma'aseh Ksafim. There are 8 Pelim. In Parshat Lech Lecha, we find that Malki Tzedek was the Koyim Lakel Elder Rashi that's going Hashem Ben Noyach. And Avram gave him Vayitim by Ma'aseh Mikol. Avram gave him Ma'aseh from everything. Rashi says, Kol Hashaloi. Zog the Birkat Eliezer in Perik Chav Zayin. Avram Hischel Rishon Lase. Avram was the first to give Ma'aseh. Lokav Kol Ma'aseh Zedayim Ba'moira. Kol Ma'aseh Loit. V'nasan L'Shem Ben Noyach. So the first Ma'aseh in history was given by Avram Avinu. And it's noteworthy because the Rambam in Perik Tes, Hilchos Malachim, discussed the history of the mitzvahs when it started. Avram Risha had a few mitzvahs. Avram added the mitzvah of Shachris. Fred the Ravid, the Rambam left out that Avram also initiated Ma'aseh Ksafim. So the first source for Ma'aseh is Avram Avinu. Then we just like the Parashas Tola. It's the second reference to Ma'aseh Ksafim. The pasuk says, "Vayizra Yitzchak ba'aretz ahi," and Yitzchak planted, it seems. Vayimtza b'shana yimeya she'or vayibachelu Hashem. Very strange. He planted. He had 100 times of success. Zog the Pirkei Eliezer, one of the Tanoim, Blazman Horkenis. In Perik Lamed Gimel, V'Yitzchak zora dogen chas v'sholem. It's unthinkable that Torah said that Yitzchak planted. I mean, he probably planted, but you know, let's say he ate lunch. Whatever is necessary for Torah is the Torah records. Why is it important to us that Yitzchak planted? Zoktim Pirkei Eliezer, he took all his tzedakah money and he invested it. Ziru lachem l'tzedakah. And, as we know, and that's part of the Bershman program in the world, the Bershman bleibt l'shulden. The Bershman gave him 100 times success of his investment. So Yitzchak also gave Ma'aseh, Avram and Yitzchak. And it's noteworthy that the one word synonymous with tzedakah is riyah. Because there's no better investment, there's no better way of a person reaping profit like tzedakah. You know, someone told me, it's a true story. It was a few bachim, it goes back in the late 50s. They went on a vacation in Eretz Yisrael, on a tiyul, one of these far-flung places, and they saw a yid who had a kiosk, like a little soda stand. And he didn't see yeshiva life very often. He goes, tell me, come over here, bachim. You ever heard of someone, Aaron Sistavitza? So they were surprised, you know. Aaron Sistavitza was Aaron Koppel, was born in Sistavitza. He's a God Lador. What do you come to him? So he asked him, why do you ask? He goes, tell me, what's with it? He goes, Aaron Sistavitza is a God Lador. In America, has a big yeshiva. He's the leader of the dog. So I said, Baruch Hashem. So now they're really very surprised. He said, what do you have to do with Aaron Sistavitza? And I'll tell you, it was before the war. I was a young man. I had a successful business. And I wanted to give some tzedakah. I didn't know what to do with the money. So I went into this Latvi yeshiva. And I asked the Alta if he has an idea for me. So the Alta said, there's a very poor bacha, but he has a tremendous future. His name is Arla Sislevitza. You want to support him? That's fine. And now I see that my investment worked out. Imagine, he's reaping benefits of that investment, the God Lador, Torah, in America, the whole world. I mean, it's a Pharisee and Paris Pharisee. Tzedakah is something that it lasts. I'll never forget, I heard this many years ago from Yankel Belinsky. He said a story, I don't remember the nimshal, but I want to tell my own nimshal to the story. He said when he was a young bacha in yeshiva, the Rebbe asked him, Yankel, Zogman, if you have 5 candles and they're all burning and you put out 2, how many are left over? So he said, well, 5 minus 2 is 3. He goes, no, Nachama, you have 5 candles, you put out 2, how much you have left over? He said, I don't understand. I said, 3. No, you don't understand, the Rebbe says. If 5 candles are burning, they'll all burn out. If you put out 2, how much you have left? 2. You know, if you spend money, you buy food, okay, it's wonderful. If you have food, you're able to live. If you invest in tzedakah, that money doesn't burn out. That money goes and goes and goes and goes. The one word for tzedakah from Isa is real. It's something that continues, like a tree that continues to bear fruit. And Taka the Rambam, that I mentioned earlier, says that Yitzchak was Mesaken Isaac Safin. So either it's Avram like the Ravid or Yitzchak. But then we have this big Sedra, Parsha Yetze, Vayida Yaakov Neda, and he says, the Parsha, watch me, V'cholash atitili asa esranullah. Whatever you give me, I will give you a portion. Zot the Medrash, Das the Canaan on the pasuk brings it down. Yaakov tiken losses ma'asim in Hamon. Very clear lashon. Yaakov was misaken. It wasn't just an egg in the tzidkis. He was misaken to give ma'asik sofim. In fact, that's the Canaan of Alitaisis adds, a min asked him Shuv al-Levi, oh, he gave Maisa and everything? He didn't give Maisa on his children. So, the answer sure did. He gave Levi. Kodesh Hashem. In fact, he describes how he did it. Like, when you have behaviors, 1, 2, 3, the 10th one was Levi and he gave Levi. The Moshe Zekanim, that's also one of the Mishayim on this pasuk, says what's the chiddush? Yaakov did everybody. Avraham also did. But he even gave Ma'aser that Hafshel she'oichel b'chol yom. So here we see, I think, a very new meaning to the word minig abayseinu. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov all gave Ma'aser. But this is all obviously before Matan Torah. What seems to be a source in the Torah to Ma'aser is in Parshas Re'eh, by Chamishi, Aser Ta'aser, Zot Timor in Tainis Daftes, Aser B'shvil Shetis Asher. Give and you'll get back. Zot Tais is quoting the Sifri, Ainli Elatua Zaracha, which the pasuk is talking about. Of course you have to give Ma'isa on Tua. Where do we see Ribis? Of course, have to give Ribis either to a guy or have to Iska. Where does he have to give Maisa on Ribis to Pakamatya B'chol Shar Revachim Minayin Tamalayma Eskol? So Taisa should have said, what do you have to say the word Eskol? Asad Asad Tuazaracha. Eskol, the rabbis, any income has to be Maisa. And indeed, in Reish Mem Tes Sifal in Yeridea, the Bir HaGra, when the Mechaber speaks about giving tzedakah, he points to this Sifri. And the Mechaber is not referring to Maisa, but the Goyin said that's the chiyuv of giving Maisa from this Sifri. Now the emphasis, there are other sources in Nach, in the Pasuk in Mishlei, Kabbalah Hashem Mahaynecha. So the Shalmi in Pei says giving Maisa from money is Mahaynecha. And of course, how can we not mention that very beloved Pasuk in Malachi, Evius Kol Maisa Beisa Oitza Ubechanuna of the Zois, Hakoyis from Brach Ad Belidai, Zok the Sefer Chassidim, one of the Rishayim Sim Kuf Mem Dalet. This Maisa is Maisa Ani that you give. Mikol Ashi Aviach Ha'olam, listen to the Lashon, Hein Beribis, Hein L'Schar, Afilu Matzah Geneva, Oivile Geneva, or anything basically, you have to give Maisa. So we have, if you're counting 6 sources, Avram Yitzchak the Yaakov, Parshas Re'eh, the Pasuk in Mishlei, and the Pasuk in Malachi. And that's why it's not surprising that the Rashitis and the Rosham, the Goyin and Shnois Eliyahu, the beginning of Peah, that says Maisa is a Chiyah D'Oraisa. Just like other tzedakah is a D'Oraisa, Maisa, Momen is a D'Oraisa. The Pashto of the Taz later in Shim Amar Aleph, Tzidkot Amar Beis indicate that's what he holds also. However, Kiva Eiga in Peah and the Rosh Hashanah and Reish Mem Tes Sifal in Beis feel it's not a D'Oraisa. Mamish, don't forget, it's not the Pashto Pshat in the Pasuk. It's no more than a Smachta, so we'll call it a Rabbanon. But I must tell you that the overwhelming majority of Poskim, the Rosham, the Bach, and Simon Reish Mem Tes, feel it's not a D'Oraisa or the Rabbanon. It's a minig. Now, it sounds strange. Minig after all these Mekayers, but then you think about it. Avram Yitzchak is before Matan Torah. Parshas Re'eh is an Asmachta. The Psukim in Navi is not necessarily a Chiyuv, but it's not a simple minig. As I told you, this is literally minig Avoseinu B'Yadeinu. Avram Yitzchak Yaakov did it. Yaakov was Mesaker it. And I must mention also the Chavas Yair, a very important tshuva in Simon Reish Chav Dalet. He says, even if you hold that it's not a D'Oraisa or the Rabbanan, but it can be more than a Rabbanan. Why? Because if you gave Maisa, now it's minimally a neder. And a neder is a D'Oraisa more than a Rabbanan. In other words, a regular mixed Rabbanan, you're not doing Alts Neder. But this you're doing Alts Neder, and neder becomes a D'Oraisa. But there's another aspect of Maisa itself that we have to understand before we apply this for Maisa, and that what Chofetz Chaim writes in Havas Chesed Chelik Beis Perek Chav. And he makes a very astonishing statement that even though tzedakah is D'Oraisa and Maisa is a minig, but in a certain sense, Maisa is more than tzedakah. How could that be? So he says a tremendous appreciation, a tremendous chshivas of Maisa itself. And he says, when a person gives tzedakah to an ani, it's a wonderful accomplishment. We're not minimizing that. But Maisa is a whole different accomplishment. A person goes to work, a person schleps to work, the aggravation at work, the disappointments, whatever goes into the klal of B'zeias HaPechel Toichel Lechem, it is a klal. But someone who's living to give Maisa, every fruit that he makes is making up his earnings, and he's very willing and very excited to give 10% or 20% from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Zot Chofetz Chaim, he writes a very powerful lashon that then he becomes a shulti with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm working to provide for my not so I will partner with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I found the Sefer Mini Yisrael Torah says the same Yisoid is Gush Levi in Parshas Re'eh, first one in Parshas Pekudei. I must mention the Tanya in Perek Lamed Al, so the same Yisoid. And the Chavas Yair in the actual Reish Lamed also says this, that Maisa is a person enters a partnership with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Think about it. A Yid goes to work because he wants to give Maisa. So every penny that he makes is shekel HaKodesh, because I have to make money to give 10%. Now, this is so much so that I saw the Shvus Yankov in Chelik Beis Siman Pei Dalet asks, how could the Chavas Yair say that we're making a shut for the HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Charvuse klape Ishmael. The Gemara Shabbat, the Bracha says, Sharalei Nara, he has to ask Mechila. What, you call it a shutfis? The obvious teretz is, that doesn't mean that you put up on your business Combs and HaKadosh Baruch Hu Incorporated. It's a very warming, a very wonderful schus that I'm earning money to give. And mashallah, someone that has a lot of parnasa, but he goes to work to make money to help support his parents. So it's a very delightful work. He's working to support his parents. A person is not supporting HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it's not a shutfis in a literal sense, but it's a tremendous schus that gives meaning to going to work. Going to work and coming to work, I'm going to try to meet my fulfillment of giving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it gives a tremendous godless to my success. I was thinking that's really the oimik of aser to aser. Where do we find a mitzvah that you get back? But that's really the yesod. You know, the person that gives, he's faithful. So the person says, I can trust you. I'll give you more. I want to get more. Shimon, the Agdama Tashari Yosh explains, Aser to Aser is not a schar. It's a person proves himself devoted and faithful. If you have a good worker, you hire him again, you pay him more. Maybe that's also the pshat in what's otherwise a very big kasha. The pasuk says in Malachim, we mentioned earlier, Uvechanuni nav v'zois. The Baruch not only allows us but implores us, please test me, give ma'aseh, and you'll see. I'll give you back. And the Gemara asks, Kapitinus, V'oksiv Nasus Hashem Olekecha. You're not allowed to test HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What do you mean? B'chununa b'zois. So the Gemara says that no, Ma'aseh is different. It doesn't explain why is Ma'aseh different. So it could be the same feeling. There's a partnership. We have to be faithful, and Kaviyach, the Baruch wants to show that he's Kaviyach 1,000 times very reliable. A partnership has to work, has to cannot. And if we have to prove ourselves, the Baruch also wants to prove himself Kaviyach. But be that as it may, what we see from this is that there's definitely a chiyuv of ma'aseh, whether it's the rice, or rabbanan, or minig, and it's more than just tzedakah. It's giving a certain meaning to our working. It's making every dollar shekel hakodesh. It's a partnership of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now let's apply this l'maisa, and we'll see taka how once we have the yesod, everything else really fits in. Let's start with a simple question. Someone called me at a shayla. He had a suffix if he has to give ma'isa. Suffix ma'isa, how do we treat a suffix ma'isa? So this is mamish told you in our original shayla. If it's a deraisa, say deraisa l'chumah. If it's krabon or a minig, suffix l'hakum. And I think that's the shot in a story quoted in the Keser Roish in the Kuf Chavdal and Haggas of Chaim Malvozhina. He once had a suffix ma'isa, and he was faithful. Doesn't say why, but obviously it's suffix derbanan or maybe a suffix minig l'hakum. Right after that, in his household, someone was using the be'er, the well, and the bucket fell into the well. Couldn't get it. The well is very deep. So they tried to use a garrison, some type of axe, some type of a keli, to get the bucket out, and that also fell into the be'er. And Chaim heard the commotion, what happened? He said, don't ask. We lost the glee, now we lost the garrison. So Chaim made a cheshbon, how much each was worth, and it amounted to the same amount of money they had a suffix ma'isa. So he realized this is a message, and he took out the money and he gave it to ma'isa, and right after he gave the ma'isa, both the lead and the garrison, both the bucket and the axe, floated to the top. Now, it's not after a moifis. I mean, it could be it was a moifis, but it says in the bottom, and it's unbelievable, that this is the Chaim Malvozhina Shitasa, because he writes it in Keser Roish, it's in Chaf Aleph and Kuf Mem Zayin, that a punishment is not like, we understand that the person hits you, punishment. Punishment is a midah connected midah, so you should realize what mistake you made. Every punishment connected midah. If a person gets punished and he says, hey, where'd that come from? Oh, he sees a connection, and he does tshuva what he did wrong, so there's no more reason for the punishment. So it has to be that when a person does tshuva, he goes back to where he started. That's the way they explain it. If he did something wrong with Maisa and he gave Maisa, so you get that. But what to me was interesting is, why did he do wrong? I was thinking, I was Talmud of the Goyin, and the Goyin says it's a deraisa, then he has no choice. He should have been machmir to say the deraisa. But Mamaisa could be also that if you hold, like we said, it's a din of a neder, maybe neder deraisa also. But I want to say that even though I saw the Maisa Ish, Ahmed Kuflin Bey is quoting the Skypler, that when you have a Safik Maisa, give again. Ein mafsidin from tzedakah, you never lose. But no, very good. Allah, we have to declare Safik Maisa is lahakol, but we have disciples of Tocha. Af pam ein mafsidin, we never lose by giving tzedakah. I once added, it's interesting, the Goyin, in the middle of his life, decided to go to Eretz Yisrael. And he left his wife, children, single children, he left an aged mother, and he went there to Israel. The guy wasn't a big Baal Parnas, but when he left him basically penniless. If you look at the Igeres Hagra, he writes, Laman Hashem, don't forget to be mafresh, a chaymish of the Dechasim, and if not, your oiva on Issa every day. So she does say there's an Issa deraisa in not giving mice. So I ask you, you leave your family behind, he definitely did not have a hidden Swiss bank account, guaranteed. I don't know how they survive. But he has to tell him Nachtetzu to give 20%. Teretz the Goyin Chalila wasn't an Achza, he was a minder. And he realized that the best investment, the best insurance policy, the best guarantee that his wife and children, his aged mother will have Panasa is to give Maisa. And as the Chaim Volozhin says, if you give a Chaymish, you're guaranteed, certainly, Asa B'Shvil Sedizasha. So a person doesn't lose by giving. It's interesting, it's noteworthy, maybe it's amazing, I don't know the right word, but the first two times we find giving in the Torah, in Parashas Truma, the Yikhuli Truma. You're taking, but you're giving. Then you have in Parashas Kisisa, the Nasnu, which you read both ways, because he doesn't give, he's always taking. So they basically, a Safik Maisa is Lahakal, but if you want to give, Avada, it's not doing something that's foolish. The Chavetz Chaim in Chelik Beis, Amos Chesed, Perik Yud Ches, Sivkot Beis, he has a whole way of giving Maisa, and he cautioned, before you give Maisa, make sure to say Bli Neder. Now, where he's coming from is because he's assuming it's only a minig, and if you give out a minig, it's wonderful. But once it becomes a neder, then Chas V'Shalom, you might be nichshel and avoid the door. So it's best is to start B'Torah's minig, Bli Neder. Of course, give as much as you can, but this way you don't run into the risk of violating a neder. The Palayoyitz and Erech Maisa also says this, but he cautions, even though he said Bli Neder, K'chol HaYoyitz B'Pid Yaseh, and don't forget, even if it's difficult, to give Maisa. In other words, Bli Neder doesn't mean that you have no obligation to give. It means there's no special chaymer of Nedar. Question, someone who's having a hard time and he can't afford to give Maisa. I mean someone that's really having a hard time, he's stretching, but he really can't afford to give Maisa. So this Lamaisa is a question, of course, that is very subjective. I'm going to tell you something. I once got a phone call from a woman, I don't know who she is, and she identified herself, she's a single mother, raising the family. So there's a child about Isaac suffering. So I said, what's the shaila? So she says, well, we have no income. Her husband left her. She's raising a house full of children. What's your income? No income. So what's the shaila? When she gets welfare, so how do you calculate Maisa on welfare? So I told her very politely, I don't think you have to give Maisa. So she told me very adamantly, I didn't ask you if I have to give. I am giving. I want to know how. Remind me of what I heard once from Shem Chazon Ish. Once someone was asked him, where does it say that Giyus Bonim is awesome? Who status? So he opened his jacket and said, mein heart status. I guess this woman has a heart, and her heart it says you have to give Maisa. So, is there a chiyuv? Lamaisa, if someone can't afford it, it's takapata. Why? Because we find in Hilchos Tzedakah, Reish Nun Aleph Seed Gimel, Panosas Atzmei Kedemes L'Chol Adam. Ve'ein Echayev L'Asa Tzedakah Ad She'yolei Panosasai. If you're potter from Tzedakah, it's logically you're potter from Maisa. And Taka, that's the Shita of the Chavos Yair that I mentioned, the Beis Meir, and Shim Amalef, and Ois Kuf Menvov, Rav Moshe, Yeridei, Beis Kuf Gimel, and Chasitzkin Vov Kuf Aleph, that Ma'aser is not more common than Tzedakah. Now the emphasis is that when you learn of Tzedakah, you'll come across the shtickle of the Spira, and Reish Mem Ches Aleph, and Mechaber says, even an Ani HaMefarnes, when a Tzedakah is Mechuyev in Tzedakah. You look at the Shach emphasizes the Spira. Basically, the Pais can say if someone is taka a real Ani, he's potter from Tzedakah, and certainly potter from Ma'aser. Now, this is to someone that's a real Ani. You have to realize what the Mechaber says in Reish Mem Zayin, Tzid Beis, La'olam ein adam ma'ani min ha-tzedakah, v'loi davara, v'loi hezik misgal v'ayodah shenema, the Pasuk Yeshayahu, v'ayim ha-ma'aser tzedakah, shalom. You don't lose from giving tzedakah, but if someone feels he can't give, ma'alacha, we have to tell him that he's not going to. There is a better eitzah, let's say a person who's struggling, especially you have younger life learning that they're struggling. I heard this from Rapam, and when I learned the sugya now, I saw the Yenison Steif, and Simon Nun Vov, the Min Chasitzkin, Chelik Vov, Kuf Aleph, all say, it's a better eitzah. Even if you can't afford to give Ma'aser, let him be mafresh the amount on his earnings, and then give it to the person that deserves it most. Who's that? Himself. People could give him their Ma'aser money, so why can he give himself his own Ma'aser? Now that might sound strange. How do you give Ma'aser to yourself? But let me explain why that is perfectly legitimate. Because we have another question that people constantly ask. Let's say I designate my Ma'aser money. Could I then break it into small bills, put it in my pocket, and then when I go to shul and I'm approached by various collectors, I'll give them. That's my Ma'aser money to give to tzedakah. So this question, or these questions, touch upon a very big yesod. Because we group together tzedakah and Ma'aser, it's all charity. But there's a very big difference. First of all, tzedakah is a chiyuv for ani. And when there's kaimi ani, when there's an ani knocking the door, you're mechuyev to give right away. Let's say there's no ani. Let's say, unfortunately, in the dark days of COVID, when a person didn't go to shul, there was no collect from house to house. So theoretically, there was no chiyuv of tzedakah. There's no kaimi ani. Ma'aser is a totally different mitzvah. Ma'aser, if you look at the source, the main source is aser to aser. What is that pasuk talking about? Rashi says that's the mitzvah of Ma'aser Sheni. What is Ma'aser Sheni all about? A person took part of his produce and went up Mishalayim and ate the produce. You're eating your own Ma'aser? So look in Tosfos in Bava Basra, Daf Chafal, types in the pasuk that says there, Laman Tilman Liyira, because a Yid went up to Yishalayim and he saw Kedusha Gedoyla, he saw Kehanim doing Avodah, he became a big Yerushalayim. Laman Tilman Liyira, Godel Ma'aser Sheni Shemeva De Talmud Torah. A person went to Yishalayim and he saw Ruchnias, he became a better Yid. The chinuch and mitzvah shin samach, which is regarding Ma'aser behema, but he says that the same is true in Taf Mem Beis, Taf Mem Gimel, Taf Mem Dal, regarding various Ma'aser Sheni, explains that the place, the embassy, the center of Torah was Yishalayim. But people lived around the world. Zot the chinuch, the Baruch wanted a person to connect on a constant basis to Kedusha. So take the Ma'aser and go to Yishalayim and spend time in seeing real Yiddishkeit and a flourishing Yiddishkeit. Watch the Kehanim, watch the Lengdei Torah. Laman Tilman Liyir. In other words, if I could put it very simply, tzedakah is to help the ani. Ma'aser Sheni is to help yourself. Become a better Yid. I'll prove it. There's a beautiful tshuva in the Netziv Meishav Dov Chelik Beis Siman Ayin Hey. And he says, imagine you have a balabas who works full-time, and he gives his Ma'aser to support the neighbor, the Yidikali man. One year he says, you know what, I have a good idea. I also want to learn. I'm taking off a year to learn. I'm going to use my Ma'aser money this year, and next year I'm going to learn. He's taking a sabbatical. Zoktan, it said, you want to do that? Yachaylu brachas al roisha. A bracha ben kepala. Why? That's what Maisa is all about. Maisa tzedakah, Maisa ksafim is like Maisa shein. It's to improve your ruchnius. Now, if someone is not able to learn, give it to someone else. If you use it for yourself, chayach hakoyim. And that's what the Tzid Paskins. A person can take his Maisa and take a sabbatical and learn. Which is certainly the pshat what I told you earlier in the Marin Shtayf. You could take Maisa and give it to yourself. Because Maisa is to make money shekel HaKodesh. Just like Maisa Sheni, he didn't give it to someone else to eat, he ate it himself. You might have a type of enough of Maisa. And that's why, although the Maril, which is quoted by the Ramah, this is challenging, the Ramah in Reish Tes Aleph says you can't use Maisa money for any mitzvah except for giving to Aniyim, which is based on Maril. However, the Drisha, the Shach, called Chuvas Maram, that you could use Maisa for any mitzvah that you're not mechuyev to do. Interesting, the Mashalom that the Maram gave is you could use Maisa to be a sandik by a bris or an unterfeir by a chuppah. Now, what does he mean to say? In those days, the sandik was given the honor of being sandik because he paid for the Suda. People were very poor, they couldn't afford the Suda. The sandik paid for the Suda. That was the sandik. The unterfeir was one that paid for the chassid. So Maram, one of the Rishonim, is saying that Maisa is lav dafka for tzedakah, for the honor. It's to use for a mitzvah that you wouldn't otherwise do, you're not required to do. You can't use Maisa and buy matzvah or dalet mina, because you're going to davar shemachayva. Davar shemachayva ain't involved in rachulin. But a mitzvah you're not mechuyev to do, and you do it anyhow, you can use Maisa. Zogich Sam Soif in Siman Reish Lamed Beis in the Chuvas near Adeyah. Why is that so? Pashut. Yaakov didn't give Levi to the Salvation Army. What did he do with Levi? He gave Kodesh Hashem to learn. The Gemara in time is Aser to Aser, the Yisoid of Maisa, is from Maisa Shein. That's not giving it to an Ani, it's giving it to yourself. Zotich Sam Soif, and Mineyu Brave, from the Makar of the Maisa, it's money to be used for Ruchnias. It's a Ruchnias tax to connect oneself with Ruchnias, with a percentage of his money. That's why Lamaisa, you could use money, Maisa money for supporting someone learning, for Moistis of Chesed, for supporting yeshiva, even though they're not Aniyim. Now I must apologize, I wanted to go through the sugya of using Maisa money for tuition, for supporting children in Koil. I realize it's too big of a sugya, so I'll have to leave for a different time. But that's really totally in the shayla. If you have tuition money that you're mechuyev to send your child to yeshiva because it's an ankel of anecha, you can use Maisa. If it's something you're not mechuyev to do, you do it out of the generosity of your heart. You want to support a child. If you're not mechuyev in that might be qualified. You use Maisa again. We'll talk about the more barichas at a different time. But what's again for us here, we have a very interesting question. Since if Kaimi Aniyim, I have a Chiyah Deraisa, and a Say and a Loisase, to give an Ani, Basoyach Tiftoich, like Samuel Shalacha, how could I use my Maisa money to give the Ani in Shul? That's a bona fide Davar Shebachayah. I'm a Chiyah to give an Ani. Why is that different than the fact that I can't use Maisa to buy a Lulav? So the teretz has to be that since Maisa Ksafim is a minig, what was the minig originally done with? Mitzvahs, but certainly it doesn't preclude giving to Aniyah. It doesn't make sense. Because if a person wants to help an Ani and he wants to give as much as he can. If he can't use his Maisa money, so what then will he use? What then will he use? Also, the mitzvah that a person does are mitzvahs that he's the main beneficiary. He buys dalet minin, he buys matzah. But here, the mitzvah is to give to an Ani. So although I can't say it better than that, Lamaisa is Davar Shebachayva, but Lamaisa, it doesn't make sense that you can't use Maisa for Aniyah. The Chiddush, you can use Maisa for other mitzvahs as well. But to say you can't use it for Aniyah is not logical. You look in the Shach and Reish and Tez Gimel, he goes around Rutenberg that you're allowed to use Maisa money to Aniyah, even his own family if need be, but it's clear that no one says you can't use Maisa to to give tzedakah. Even though in a certain sense it's davar shebachayva, but it's not the typical davar shebachayva. Another factor which I want to mention, which again makes Maisa a very pleasurable experience. I saw this in the Havdama, the Haskama of the Pnei Menachem, in the Sefer Maisa Ksofim. He says, remember as a child, so the Emes one said that even though that Maisa Ksofim is not a Deraisa or Drabanan, but it's really important for the mitzvah tzedakah. And he said the following. You tell the person to give tzedakah. It's challenging. I'm going to work, I work hard, and he's collecting. Let him get a job. What do you want for my life? But if someone understands that 10% or 20% of the money that he earned is not his, never was his. Some people don't even take the money. The money goes straight into a Meister account. But even you get the money, but it's not your money. So Zakti Imre Yemes, if a person gives Meister, then he gives tzedakah b'lei shalom ayin yafa, and he got oiva chalila miyisa layeir levavchem sitalei. Now, I give a mashal. Imagine a Gevir approaches you with a suitcase. He says, listen, I need a favor from you. I have to go to Israel now. I can't do what I like to do, but I'd like to give out cash every week, $100,000 cash. Could you do me that favor and you give out the money for me? You just give out to anyone. No problem. Whatever you want. You come into shul, you come a break to the chutin. You're giving out so much money, it's not costing you a penny. It's not your money, right? Well, guess what? That's what Maisa Ksofim is supposed to give a person that attitude that 10% or 20% is not my money. That's Kodesh Lashem Yikar. And the Emes is learning that's the understanding of Maisa Ksofim. It enhances or makes possible the mitzvah of tzedakah. Now, I saw this before the Imre Emes in the Friedman Shulchan Aruch in the back. It's the Mefarshim. They call it an Imre Bean. This is in Reish Mem Tes Dalet. It quotes his Zayda, who says a nifla dikatayich in the pasuk. Nasa in Titein. Should give it. Give tzedakah. Layer levat v'sit chalai. So the Imre Bean, according to Zayda, Nasa. First, you have to know. You have to set aside my money. It's not your money. Then, it's easy Titein. And then, Layer levavcha v'sit chalai. But he goes weiter. Because the pasuk says, L'manya v'rechecha, b'chol masecha, b'chol mishlach yodecha. Why a double lashon? The teretz is, you think you're giving your own money, you're really not giving your own money. It's really the person's money. But in your mind, it's b'chol masi yodecha. But it's not really. It's a spiel. You're giving the person back his money. That's the psychology of Maisa Ksofim. A person works and he knows 10% or 20% is not his. So it's very easy to give away Yenem's guilt. The Steipler in a letter, in a very short letter, in Kraya Aleph Kuf Peites, V'vade inyan godel v'kodesh u'lidei Maisa Ksofim, u'baladei zeh kimachi efshel kaim mitzvah tzedakah kedin. I don't know exactly what he's referring to, but I think it's the same attitude. It's hard to give away tzedakah money, tzedakah. But if it's not your money, if it's the Rebbeinu Shalom's money that you're just a gizber on, then it makes it easier. So therefore, I think it should be encouraged. A person that has Maisa, and it happens in a million that there's many collectors, be a step ahead. Take a $100 bill, go to the bank if necessary, get a small check, singles, fives, or 10, and feel like that, Yid is giving out to the Gevir's money, because really it is. Don't forget, besides the lav and the assay of refusing an ani, the pasuk says, the Rambam and the Mechaber quotes in Reish Mem Tes Dalet, says even if there's even in a situation there's no isser of leisamites or the no mitzvah of nasay titein, there's at least an isser midivrei Kabbalah based on a pasuk in Tehillim, al yoshev dach nichlan. You're not allowed to refuse an ani. Now that's something you need to share for itself. I'm just telling you, Mechaber and what Rabbi Sefer on Hilchos Tzedakah told me, he has a Chaim, the guidelines of this lav Rabbanan, because in the shul there's so many collectors. Chaim told him, who told me, it's the hardest question in Hilchos Tzedakah. How do you deal with that? Now, a person, they said Chaim Oizer said he came to the shul in Vilna, he was beleaguered by collectors. You have to give every collector, not push it. But anyhow, on a more practical level, if a person comes in with that envelope or he keeps a pocket of nicer money, that money is not his, just give it. Why not? Why not be a nice guy? It's not your money anyhow. So you can really fulfill the Ma'aseh Ksafim and the Mitzvah Tzedakah. A bacha that earns money, or a single girl that works and earns money, why should they give Ma'aseh? It's not a din of being married. Now, even if you hold it's a minig, but you know, women clock Rishanis, which is only a minig, so why is it different? Now, some girls, single girls, they put away their Ma'aseh money, they put away all the money actually, and they use it first to get married. So if you're not touching the money, you're not going to give Ma'aseh. Again, hopefully the money will accrue interest, you'll give more on the money. But certainly there is a chiyuv on what single people earn. The earlier Paiskim discussed if a bacha has to give Ma'aseh for a different reason. Because a typical yeshiva bacha was considered an ani. I'm not joking. Meyer Bay in Poland, they want mamish ani and merudim. They had no family support. They mamish didn't want to eat. So then the discussion was that yeshiva bacha considered an ani. You want to give matanas Rav Yonim. But today we don't consider our children aniyim. That they're well fed, they're well taken care of. And there's no reason a bacha should not give Ma'aseh. On the bar mitzvah, and here's a beautiful shayla, Chanukah geld, the child gets Chanukah geld. Should he be trained to give Ma'aseh? Obviously, no chiyuv if he's a cotton. But then again, if we machanech on every other mitzvah, machanech on a clapping Rishanis, why not on this? Don't forget Rashi in the beginning of Parshas Sav, whenever there's a chasar and kiss, we need rezus. You know, a child that is ingrained when he's a child to give tzedakah will give us a god. Otherwise, he's overwhelmed by the difficulty of giving 10% of a lot of money. Someone told me one of the happiest moments of his life, and I quote, is when his son got $1 from the Zayda, Chanukah geld, and the child on his own said, Tati, I need change for $1 because I have to give 10 cents to tzedakah. The boy wasn't even 10 years old, but he's giving away Ma'aseh. I guess his parents were machanech by example. It wasn't taught, it was caught. No? Isn't that a wonderful chinuch? But that's what we have to do to make it exciting, and the children know that it's something that he does. You give 10% to the Baruch Shalom. So that's why I can't say it's mamish a chiyuv, but definitely it's a wonderful chinuch to train the children to give. An aggressive father told me, yeah, but it's really not the child's money, it's my money, because the cotton that's his and the chasam is mine. I said, now you're making it much worse, because now you're zichur to give. Your money you have to give. But the Emes to come on to this kunsin, it's a chinuch opportunity that will be worth every penny that the child gives is an investment for the future. So Zalman points out if the child doesn't use his money, he puts it in a bank until he becomes a god. When there's no chalois petor als cotton, so Avadi should, if he wants to, certainly Avadi should be trained. Now, if the child resists, he doesn't want to give, so he's probably layagil l'chinuch. So don't train him, don't make it a struggle or a battle. But if he's excited about it, it's a wonderful chinuch that will certainly give rich dividends. The next group is a very challenging question. You see what the truth, what the Neibuda says, you're struggling without a Shas or a Shulchan Aruch. Is there a chiyuv to give Ma'aseh on gifts? Someone got a very expensive microwave, which he needed. Does he have to give Ma'aseh? Is Shavah Kesef Kekesef? Is Ma'aseh Kesef from Dafka? So you think back to most of the sources, is Lav Dafka Kesef. Yaakov gave Levi, Cholash Atitem Li, Shavah Kesef is Kekesef. Noteworthy, Rabbi Yochanan Seif HaYira, in Ois Samach Gimel, Mikol Dava, everything you get, you should give Ma'aseh, and I quote his Lashon, Afilu Matzah Metzia, Aynas Like Matana, whatever you get, Min HaKol, Yafrish Ma'aseh. The Peleyoids in Erech Ma'aseh spells out, you give Ma'aseh from Matana, Kesef, and Shavah Kesef. And that's why Shlomo Zalman is quoted in a number of stars. His sheet was, you give Ma'aseh on Kesef and Shavah Kesef, a nice gift, you have to give Ma'aseh. However, I must tell you, I learned this sugya. Most Paiskim seem to say the minig ha'olam is not to give on matanis. The Rosham, the head of the Chazon Ish, is quoted by Chaim Kanievsky in Derech Hamuna, Perek Zayin, Tzidkot, and Samach Zayin. And I saw an earlier source, the verse of the Alalei, Michael Beis, Mem Dalet, and this is relative in a few places in the Song, Put Shani, Shabbos, Chayel Beis, Omid Shin, Amar Aleph. What basically they say is that since the whole Maisik Sofim is a minig, you have to follow the minig the way the minig was originally accepted. And it was never accepted to give Maisa on Matanis. Again, I would have thought differently, but who am I? The minig is a minig when the way it was accepted, and it was never accepted to give Maisa on Matanis. Now, I or Ben Yoyin is Loshin Matana, so that's not such a Raya. Could be Matana means a Hanukkah gift or a wedding present. That's a nice check. It doesn't say Matana. It's only the Pele Yoyin who spells out Shavah Kesef. Okay. That would support some is Al Mashita. But again, I looked into this. It seems most places can say that there's no chiyuv on matanis. Now, I think I can explain it on a practical level. First of all, it's very hard to estimate how much the present is worth. Second of all, think about it. There is no mice that we have that we don't give a percentage. Mice behema, mice trua, all mice you give 10%. What do? You get a microwave gift. So you break it into 10 pieces and give one to the pushka? Obviously not. So what do you have to do? You have to sell it to go to the Maisa. Where do we find you have to sell an item if you don't have money, you have cash on hand, to give Maisa? Maisa is much of Esther, a tenth. You give a tenth of behemoths, of trua, of whatever you get, but a gift is one chafza. That explains also, but the mice at the end of the day, the Chazon Ish himself is quoted as saying, if someone does give mice on matanais, any idea mikama dvamhum umatzel es atzma. It's a wonderful insurance policy, but there is no chiyuv. Monetary gifts, even if it's a gift, that's their benyayin. But a person gets a non-monetary gift, although Shem Zalman was machmir, you see this in a few places, he's quoted. But it seems the minig is not to give. A gift certificate, in a certain sense, is a little more doimah to money. It has a dollar amount on it. But then again, zil basatayma. You can't cash that in and get money. It's basically they're giving you the job of buying your own gift. But at the end of the day, it's basically a matana, which is not a monetary matana. And Taka, and so Chaim Kanievsky said on a gift certificate also there's no chiyuv ma'isa. If you could cash it in and get cash, you give it on the cash. But basically a gift certificate, or the parent says, here's my credit card, buy what you need. I mean, don't ever say that, by the way, it's not a good idea. Whatever you need, but a specific thing to buy. So basically they're giving you a gift and they're giving you the job of buying. You're the shliach to buy your own gift. But at the end of the day it's a gift, and basically there's no chiyuv ma'isa. If someone had some damages and he got an insurance payment, insurance claim, so the person basically said that even though he's getting real money, real cash, but it's just retribution to the damage that he incurred. He's not making money. So basically he's getting back the money he lost. There wouldn't be a chiyuv ma'isa on that payment, even though it's momentous, it's not like a gift. Now, if the person made a lot extra, so I don't know if it's a chiyuv ma'isa on gezela, but on Ribbis, it says Ribbis there is a chiyuv ma'isa, so if it's gezela, you shouldn't take it in the first place. But let's say they gave more. That's where they do it. So then, more than what the person lost, the chayre he should give ma'isa. If someone was unable to work, he collected unemployment. So here I saw Pasha the Cheshbon. If he has to give ma'isa on his wages, and this unemployment is the makom wages, so why is it different than wages? He's getting money. Wages, so that the ma'isa should be given on his wages, or his kind wages is unemployment. Not that a married couple gets, this is money. Why shouldn't he give ma'isa? I will say, but my shver already gave ma'isa. So the answer is very pashut. If your shver checked his suit for shatnez, and then he gave it to you, you get his hand-me-down, you don't have to check it twice. But ma'isik safim is not a din on the chafza, on the money, it's a din on the person. So the fact that the shver gave ma'isa, how is that part to you? Now who says this exact lashon? The Taz. It's interesting. The Taz in Shin Lamed Aleph, Tzidkot Lamed Beis, he said the value you have to give on Naden. Someone said that since the one that the Shver is giving it gave it your potter, so the Taz that's Meshugish, because Mais is not a Chiyav on the Chefza, it's a Chiyav on the Gavra. So the fact that the Shver gave it does not part of the Eid. That's caution. Now this is the Matana of Mamas. Of Mamas, but the Mamas you have to give. Now all the Pais give, the Archashulcha, the Tshuva Me'ahava, the Shilas Yaivitz writes a Lashon in Siman Vav in the Chubis, Yisrael Kadosh Mechmir Atzma B'chol Artzeis Ashkenaz Chot V'layavar to give on the Naden. I once saw a very inspiring minute that Eden had that when the couple gave Maisa on Naden, they made a Suda, like a seal. Why? I think that's like a Chasam Bereshis. Something you're starting off married life with the right perspective, you're giving Maisa even on the Naden. Oh, that's like a seal. Now you're not finishing, you're starting. You're not a Chasam Torah, you're a Chasam Bereshis. But it's an appreciation that this is your insurance policy to be able to make Panasa Kol Yimei Chayecha. Yerusha, Zok Tishla, is also Chayev in Maisa. The father gave before he passed away. So the Shla said the same numbers like the Taz says. It's not a din in the Chefza, it's a din in the Gavra that's getting it. The Shla rather adds, I don't know why he needed it, but he adds, just like the father gave a Zakah to his son, an Erev, or another mitzvah, he's a different Rishus. So it's basically Haylu Chudei, so too regarding Yerush. A Pidyon Ben money is a fascinating question. Because the Imrei Emes Shloga, the Medina Rav Tainid, that since Lamaisa, the Torah Zichsaloi, why should you have to give Maisa? But the Imrei Emes Tainid that Lamaisa its earnings, and why we don't find the Keturah for Maisa Ksofim. I saw the Shevet HaKosu guy was a Kohen, the Gal Simon Reishayin. He has a shtickle raya to the Imrei Emes, because a lady's mechuyat to give Trumas Maisas. The Maisa is the Torah Zichsaloi, but still, even Torah Zichsaloi, you have to give Maisa on all earnings. Now, the truth is, Pidyon Ben money is real money. It's not just like, Matana. This is, it's not the cash in that sense, but it's over $100. It's not just $5. So a lot of the Kohen should give Maisa. I'll tell you a fascinating shayla. Let's say the Kohen decides to give back the Maisa, the Pidyon Ben money. So say, well, I'm not keeping it. But that's not true. Because the Chaim Bayevsky in the Derech HaMunah says the Chiddush Nifla. Person finds an Aveda, Harei Elu Shaloi, you gotta keep it. And decides to give it back, if it's Zadin, to the owner, before he gives it back, he has to give Maisa. Why? Because really the money is yours. You want to give it back? You're a nice guy, you give me Matana. But it's your money. First give Maisa and give it back. Now others argue and they say, what do you mean? In Shulchan Aruch it says, in Hilchos Hashem Zaveda, that it's supposed to be back money for Zadin. So you have to give it back. Not to Chiyah, but Zadin. That Machloek, there's no shach to Pidyon Ben. Pidyon Ben, some say the Kohen Dafni shouldn't give it back. So you want to give it back, okay. But it's not like he has to. So he's giving back his own money. So that's it. Only thing is like the Shilas Yayin, it's an Aleph Kufnei, that a Kohen should give it back al Safik Yichus. Then maybe you have a reason that you don't have to give Maisa. But Katzavchu, Kamoi, on the actual Yaivitz. So Bemis, it seems that if the Kohen does want to give it back, he probably should give Maisa first because that's money, his own money he's giving back. Mishloyach Monos is no Chiyav for two reasons. First, it's only Matonos, it's not money, and also it's really a Sigloinus, it's a deal, we're giving back one another, so there's no Chiyav Maisa. If parents or grandparents give earmarked money, in other words, they give the child, it's not like, they look so thin, take this money and I want you to go to the canteen in camp and buy food. Just buy food, you look so skinny. So Rav Moshe has a big chiddush in your Deichet base, Kufrid base, and tremendous the Sefer Chassidim and Simon Shimchates says the same Yisoid, that basically, if someone gives you money, real money, it says, Almanas, you should use it for yourself to buy this or this, but don't give Maisa. Then Moshe will not give Maisa. Parents give children money to survive, and he's giving Maisa. What's going to happen? He's going to have to come back, I need more money. So don't give Maisa. Earmarked money that's given for a specific purpose is not chayiv Maisa. So if typically parents give children spending money or allowance, do what you want, and this child rather likes giving tzedakah more than likes eating a Danish, so that's his pleasure, it's okay. But if it's earmarked to buy something with this specifically, not to give Maisa, that would be a p'tur of the fact that it was given al das king. What is a bigger chiddush, let's say parents pay for children's rent, married children's rent, or they pay the grocery bill, they're paying money, real money. But the child didn't get any of the money. That's called in Paiskim Mishtar Shilei. And Listen Karelitz writes in a few places, he insists that there's no Chiyuv Maisa Mishtar Shilei. Now that's a big chiddush because the Maisa, they're paying a bill, they're paying rent, it's a grace of guilt. But if you understand that Maisa is a minig, is a chiddush, it's Einach Weil Chidushay. It's money that you will receive. A matana, you didn't receive money. And Mishtar Shilei, you didn't receive money. He paid it straight to the grocery or straight to the landlord. That's Mishtar Shilei, that's pata on Maisa. Now, Shlomo Zalman says there's no p'tur Mishtar Shilei, which very much the Shitasai, that there's a chiyuv even on matanas. It's money that a person earned or saved or shalak kesef. But it seems this is what the minig is, matanas, and Mishtar Shilei is pata. What's more of a chiddush if a person goes for a job in the boss will pay kaf for kaf, and he's also paying his insurance. Now, insurance can be close to $20,000. So, for some examples, she tells us that he has to give interest on that, even though he didn't get the money, but they're saving big money. And Listen Karelitz feels that insurance money is no different than any other Mishtar Shilei, and that would be a p'tur, as he said, it's not money that he's mamish earning. And the last question that touches upon, which is really part of a big shift, but I want to at least touch upon it now, is the question of a younger man that's in koil, does he have to give Maisa on his income, his koil check, or etc., etc. So the Maisa, we said earlier, if parents give him earmarked money, he shouldn't, that he's not mechuyev to give Maisa. On matanas he's pata, Mishtar Shilei he's pata, but he's getting a check, he's getting real money. So the Paiskim seem to say, as we said earlier, if the Maisa he can't manage with his current income, so he's an onion. On his part, like we said earlier. So theoretically he'd be part. But there is a much more practical eitzah from kind of mitzvah in a nice way. Let him be mafish the money and keep it for himself. He's doing Maisa Sheni. He's doing Maisa Sheni. That's what Maisa Sheni is all about. The Steipler and Archas Rabbeinu recommends a better idea. Let him speak to his chavrus who's also struggling, and they'll swap their own Maisa. I give you, you give mine. Just make sure your chavrus has more than you have. But basically, you could swap. Like we find matanas that Yoyim Tonim could swap. Why not? And basically, as long as he fulfills the mitzvah. But really, what should be the closing lashon is Mechaber's lashon. A person doesn't lose her Maisa. You know, there's a kasha that Prisha asks in Reish Mem Zayin Yudalit. The Gemara says in Al Testament, "Baruch Hu Yisef Tzedakah." Why is tzedakah different? So he quotes his Rebbe the Marshal because it's not really testing. I give a mashal. Imagine you go to play brak, you're Feher of Chaim. Okay? What's your Feher? What's the first Mishnah in Elam Metzias? Every child knows. If Chaim knows it, Yashiv you tell you can't just help it. Now, did you Feher? Well, you asked him a question. But what do we call that in English? Entertainment, or maybe bizarreness. You Feher of Chaim in Elam Metzias? But you went through the motions, right? But it's not a Feher. When a person gives Maisa, we think that he's testing Kadosh Baruch Hu. But in reality, it's a joke that's funnier than testing of Chaim Elam Metzias. That's what the Marshal says. So a person that gives, v'yikchu, v'nashnu, let him give and give and give. Hashem help, we also have Panasa. I will talk to you all.
Share, beautiful share. Share, making sure I'd like to thank our best friends for the wonderful share. The Sikkim of the show will be right after Mincha. The daily schedule, the next few weeks for sure, on the back of the Besmedish. Every day we have a share 1:30 in the Besmedish. And our boys say, you can also give Maisi, Mechazik, and Egen Shea Toilet from Yidacham all over the world. Mechazik, Abotza Toilet, the big Zikr Rabbi, gets sponsored share. And give, and even should they give, with Kiflik of life, with Simcha, Verachas, V'chol HaToiv. And Chaim HaKasharim, Rot Kishbog, Lazak, Oisis, Yisroel, the Figi Ribbon, and Mitzvah, Shama, Arachos, Matzitkoi. Yartel Torah V'Yadei Kaddish.
Shalom Shalom Shmei Rabo. Shalom 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 Kone Karim Shifei. Vayechem Vayechem Chayil Beis Yisrael. Vaygalos Vaykodim V'Me'amai. Vayechem Rabo. Shabbat Dosim Shnasei. Shalom 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 Shmei Gusha. Chayil V'Chashu Shirat Yisrach Mosel Yalma V'Me'amai. Varvan Lemotis Yasmane Kondos Melai Solyat Lemavasa. Lord, Mr. Marab, Kisrach, Mekhaim, Zenavike. Karam Shmael Yaro, V'Me'amai. Yishem Ram Shmael, Chantolei, Vakal Yisrael, V'Me'amai. Torei Mo, Yachim Leinu, Kol Yisrael, V'Me'amai.
The secret was after Mincha.